In today's video, we are going to be doing our Euro 2024 power rankings after all three of the group stage games for every single team. I've been keeping an eye on making some reports on every single game and team, and I'm going to rate them from 1 to 24, how I think they performed, taking into account their tactics, their individual star power, and different things like that. So if you enjoy this, please do leave a like. Let me know what you think each team should be ranked in this power rankings, and let's get into it. Now, with Spain at number 1, the main thing I wanted to touch on was their press. And in the first few games, it sort of had them a bit further down the list for me, just due to that disjointed press between the two midfielders, often forming that diamond in the middle. Croatia in that first game, despite losing 3-0, did manage to carve a lot of chances through beating that press and the disjointed nature between Ruiz and Rodri. But in that second game against Italy, I saw massive improvements out of possession. Their man-to-man press, the fact they were screening the ball and trapping into the corners, with the defenders pushing up behind the press far more aggressively, and it was helping in every aspect of the game. Spain are the ones to watch for me now. Their attacking dynamics are really good. They play in that 4-2-4. They get their wingers isolated, and they are the team to watch. I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of Spain and how they play, far more in-depth than this video, just touching on little tactical bits. But in the next video, watch out for that, because I'm going to be talking about Spain in a lot of detail. Speaking of Germany at number 2, most people would think we're going to speak about Wirtz and Musiala, the two magic number 10s. But instead, we're going to speak about the two that lay the foundations for them two to excel, which is Toni Kroos and Ilkay Gundogan. The movement between the lines of Toni Kroos, that high IQ, the ability to either run in behind, drop in deep to receive the ball, and make space for others is what's so important about Germany's play. He's always facilitating for others by his movement, and Kroos is also dropping into that back line to play progressive passes between the lines and find those number 10s so that they can produce their magic. And of course, when it comes to Nagelsmann, you're looking at that high pressing, counter-pressing net of his, where he wants all of his players to be very tight in proximity around the ball and trapping teams in, exactly like you can see as they did here in their second game against Hungary. At number 3, we have, I think, the best pressing team so far at this tournament in Austria. Ralf Rangnick has done a great job with this Austria team. He's got them all playing and singing from the same hymn sheet. They're all being aggressive in that press, going man for man, and it makes a lot of opportunities, especially against France. From winning that ball high up, they did manage to create some very good opportunities. They were unlucky to lose that game, and then since then, they've gone on to get 2 very good results and top the group. We have Portugal at number 4. This is how they set up in their first game. And as much as I'm not the biggest fan of this, I do think the star power that they have, and you did start to see glimpses of the like of Fernandes starting to dictate the game, Leao getting those 1v1 isolations out on the left. And I think that star power they have is why I have them so high up. And they have at least had a solid base behind them, not necessarily structurally with the press and how quickly they revert into that press. But I think their overall shape and structure is basic to the point where they can form a strong structure going forwards with the players they have. Now, many might not agree with this after their results against Spain and Croatia, but for me, Italy are still one of the stronger teams in the tournament in terms of structure, and that all comes from Spalletti. I really like the way that they form this 3-2-5 with DeMarco holding that left width, and of course they had Chiesa out on that right side. They still have that middle compact area with the 3 in close proximity, and they have that 3-2 base ready to protect. Those fullbacks, or not fullbacks, those centre-backs, those wide centre-backs can drive with the ball, so they can also allow the play to progress from much deeper on the field, and then you can start to see nice rotations between the likes of Bastoni and Calafiori. I really like this Italian team. I really like Spalletti as a manager. I think he's the second best coach in the competition behind Nagelsmann. And I still think structurally they're one to watch, as much as their biggest issue is they don't have as much firepower as other teams in forward areas. At number 6, we have the Netherlands. And again, this basically comes down to a mixture of basic structure and some players that I think are very strong in this competition. You've got those high and wide wingers. I think Gakpo has been excellent this tournament at providing that from the left, and he's a very direct threat. Dumfries, of course, has been offering it from that right-hand side when he's been playing as that right wing-back, becoming that right winger. I do think where they lack a little bit for me is those defensive midfields without Frankie de Jong and that progressive passing between the lines to find the likes of Reinders and Simmons. Reinders has had a great tournament as well with that ability to drive and bring his team forward with that progressive carrying of his. So I think they are one to watch for an upset against a big team if they do get to face them, because they, as much as they have lost to Austria in that big game where they lost 3-2, and defensively they have had some issues, they have the team to do it and a very basic structure to work within. Now, with Switzerland at 7th, they actually started a lot lower on my list. They were still in and around the mid-tier of this power rankings, but up to this Germany game, they hadn't massively impressed me. They had had some very good individual performances, but it hadn't really sent me to put them this high. But that performance against Germany, how in tandem they was, the pressing structures that they put out to stop Toni Kroos, I think was perfect. The way they stretched the play to stop that German net of that counter-pressing, close proximity net to get into position. The runs of the likes of Mbolo in behind, it just really struck me as a top-end performance. And I think Switzerland, again, that they are playing against Italy, that could be a very interesting game with those two different dynamics against each other. Belgium at number 8, perhaps too high for some people, but I thought their pressing in the first game particularly was very underrated. I think they were unlucky to lose to Slovakia. They've also had some very individual top performances from the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, who I think has been very underrated at this tournament so far. And I do think they're close to having something click. They have a very basic structure we spoke about earlier with the width providers, people like Doku who can make something happen in any game, and Lukaku who's been unlucky to not get a few goals himself. So I think they are just one to watch and keep an eye on within that structure. I do like that 4-2-4 that they form. France at number 9, I'm not even going to massively touch on France, but the images are basically just showing, I think they have that pace and power to hurt you at all times, structurally, defensively, and even just with their build-up. I haven't been too impressed with France, but I just do think that their squad is so physically able and so much faster and more powerful than a lot of the other sides in the competition that they can hurt you on any given day, so they are never one to rule out. I'm going to keep this really short and sweet with England because I have written an article about it, which I will try and link so that you can find that and read it yourselves. The pressing has just been far too lackadaisical and the intensity's not been there. It's been dropping off far too deep. The pivot's been far too deep for my liking. I feel like when Trent was starting in that pivot, him and Rice just weren't finding ways to get on the ball and progress in a more sustainable manner where they weren't getting in each other's way and treading on each other's toes. There's been a lot of issues with this England team and it has to get better, which is why they've found themselves all the way down in 10th. When coming into the tournament, they were one of the highest ranked teams. Romania, for me, have been one of the surprises of the tournament. I think they're just one of those teams that you just have to keep an eye on based purely on their heart and their desire to win and challenge for one another. Especially in that 3-0 win against Ukraine, they were celebrating every tackle and every clearance. It's one of those teams where I think if they set up to beat you and it goes 0-0 deep in games, they are there to cause an upset. So they are one to watch, and that is why they rank so highly for me in this power rankings. Georgia, perhaps one of the most exciting teams to watch this tournament, were very good against Turkey. And again, they caused one of the biggest upsets so far. Yes, Portugal heavily rotated, but this result had a lot of effects across different groups and who each team would play in the next round. And it was a great performance with Kvasikalia and Mikadowski. I think I pronounced that very wrong. But those two both having excellent games, both getting on the score sheet. And of course, then sending Georgia through to the next round. And again, they're just one of those teams to watch. They play exciting football. They played in a very low block. Not even a low block, just a disciplined block. It was a very disciplined performance. That is the word I would use. And then when they broke out, they did it with purpose. They had the superstar in Kvasikalia to get away and make things happen. It happened early in the game, and then they stayed structured throughout. So they're one to watch, and they have been very, very exciting. Slovakia are in 13th. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want to do a bit more of a deep dive into Slovakia and their more telling matters in and out of possession, because I think there are a few interesting things. But the one thing I did want to highlight that pays dividends in this and watching Slovakia when they play is that quality they have in midfield with Duda, Lobotka and Kuka. I think they're all very good players, very top-end players that play at high levels of European football, and it shows at this level when they're playing together because they have that high level of technical security in that midfield. Now, Turkey, we're going to speak about Arda Güler, the Real Madrid superstar. He scored that amazing goal in their first game. He then actually came off the bench in the second game, And then in the third game, he did again get a start. He can be a difference maker. Him and Kalanoglu, they can make things happen out of nothing. So they are the sort of players that when you rate a team like Turkey, you have to keep an eye on them and you have to rate them purely on the fact that they could hurt you at any time with that star quality they have. Now, even though Poland went out, I wanted to put them in 15th and talk about their pressing intensity, especially against Netherlands. I was actually really impressed with their performance. And then again against France, they put in a good showing and good performance. I liked their intensity. I liked the way they pressed against the ball. And I also liked how they broke as a team to make things happen. They have a bit of star power in that team. Lewandowski didn't start the first game. I liked Urbanski from Bologna. I think he had a good cameo in that first game. And I also think that Zielinski, of course, he is one of those players that can provide that bit of quality anywhere on the pitch when it comes to him. So I wanted to give Poland a little bit of credit. Even though they have gone out, I liked their press. I didn't have too much to say about Denmark. I think 3 draws, it says a lot, really. I think defensively, they've got some very good players. And I think Hjulmand has had a very good tournament. He's another one that I've been keeping an eye on at Sporting for a long time. I think he's a great player. And I think that they've got a strong structure to work with. And they're the sort of team that are trying to beat you 1-0 in this sort of tournament. They've got the creation from the likes of Eriksen, if they can have that one moment or from a set piece. So again, they're one to watch, but I wasn't overly impressed with them this tournament so far. With Croatia, I just wanted to show their team. And the one thing I wanted to point out and why I think they're so low is I just think the physicality and the athletic ability of this team, apart from Vardiol, is just not strong enough. I don't think it helps them. I don't think they can sort of hurt teams in transition. I think teams can actually hurt them if they win the ball back due to a lack of athleticism, apart from Vardiol, as I said. And again, those runners in behind, they lack a lot up front, especially now that the likes of Perisic are starting to fade away from the national team. I just think that they're a team that lacks a lot of 1v1 threat out wide and athleticism all over the park, as I said, apart from Vardiol. So again, they were very disappointing for me this tournament, and I expected it coming in. I thought it was only fair for Ukraine to just show that they were actually on 4 points, and that even though they finished with 4 points, they still got eliminated from the competition, being in that 4th spot because they weren't in 3rd. So there was actually a 3rd place team that qualified with 3 points, as opposed to Ukraine qualifying with 4. So in that sense, I think it's unfair, and that's what I wanted to show. But that's the main thing to take. And that first game against Romania, when they lost 3-0, that really did hurt them. Again, similar to Denmark with Slovenia, they've got through based on those 3 draws, and I haven't been overly impressed with what they've put out there so far. There's been a few big moments like that late equaliser against Denmark, and of course they do have some very good players with Oblak at one end of the pitch and Sesko at the other. But again, I don't have too much to say about Slovenia. I don't think you're going to see much of a fight put up from them in this next round, but let's see if I am wrong about that. My main disappointment with Hungary was that they didn't start the way that they'd played through qualifying, and I was actually expecting them to do far better in this tournament due to how I'd watched them in qualifying and that tenacity that they played with, and then that relationist approach in the attack, which I spoke about again in one of my streams that I did when I was predicting the Euros not too long ago. Again, I was just very disappointed. It took a half-time sub going back to how they were doing in qualifications for them to actually get back in the game, get into it, and then unfortunately got it stolen away again at the last minute of the game by Switzerland, who did deserve it based on the run of play over the whole game. But Hungary did get back into it in that second half when they reverted to something more familiar. So I was just disappointed that they didn't have that same bravery as they did before coming into the tournament. Albania, I thought it would only be fair to show their amazing moment that happened really early against Italy. That was a great moment for them, but I think that they just gave up territory so easily after that goal against Italy, allowing them to just walk their way back into that game. Again, wasn't too impressed against Spain. I thought they showed fight against Croatia to get that draw, but yeah, very disappointing overall considering they had that amazing moment early on in the tournament. Now, Czech Republic, they're an interesting one because I think defensively they're quite astute, and I do like how they play. They're sort of like a mini Brentford in the sense of how they back into that 5 block, and then they're willing to very much be stubborn in that 5. They cause Portugal a lot of issues, and then they're trying to hit you with those counter-attacks. Very Brentford-esque, but again, it just didn't quite work out. But on another day, they could be a bit higher in this list with a few extra results if it had paid off the way that it nearly did against Portugal. Serbia, for me, just a massive disappointment. I thought they were going to offer a lot more. I saw a lot more volume coming from crosses and getting balls into those dangerous strikers coming into the tournament. But again, they just didn't show it during this group stage. And I think they're deservedly out of the competition due to not performing at the level that I expected them to. So I think it's unfortunate that you didn't see a bit more of a strong Serbia push to, at least I had them as coming second in this group. They didn't perform to that level at all, and that's why they're so low. And lastly, we have Scotland. The main thing for me is I think their block was just too easily manipulated, especially in that first game, which had them really low from the get-go in the power rankings. They did then fight back a bit in their other two games, but even in that last game against Hungary where they needed a goal, there just wasn't enough firepower there. They still seemed too happy to sit and sort of play for that late winner in that draw. They weren't really going for it. And again, I just think that block was too manipulated and too easily manipulated, especially in that game against Germany, which has them so low down this ranking. They showed a bit of fight in certain games, but that is what has left them towards the bottom of this power rankings. So what would your power rankings be, rating all of the teams from 1 to 24? I'm happy to take questions. As I said, I've got some reports written up, so if people want to ask questions in the comments, I'll happily reply with certain thought process of each team and why they're ranked a bit lower. And again, whichever team you want in more detail, please do let me know, because I'm looking to make a few videos more detailed with lots more screenshots, lots more explanation, and a lot more in-depth analysis. This is more so to touch on every single team and just one thing that I've noticed about each one. So yeah, let me know. The ones I've already got in mind are Spain and Germany. They're the two that I'm definitely going to do. But if there's another one you want to see, please do let me know down below. And also let me know your power rankings in the comments below. See how similar they are to mine.